Dakag to pasamat ko kaniyo langon Tokiko na tabang kanami Hira manama hangun tamakapyan nun Hasta ta mga kasiyan nun natabang ka namin, kay talabuta, iya manama. At kami nagpaidas amay ray tumanama, diyan talagit, tabang ka pa ka namin.
That was Mrs. Gertrude Vimbaye Mumarami from Zimbabwe and Miss Edmarie Mahumanay Inda Manobo from North Cotabato, Philippines.
One, two. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for having us. Like they announced, my name is Gertrude Vimbaye Munamo Pumayaramba. I am an artist. I am the director of the Zimbabwe Theatre Association, and I am part of the board of ITI Zimbabwe, and I am their developmental officer. It's such an honor for us, the Zimbabweans, to be here. We'd like to thank Cecile and the whole team right here in ITI. We'd like to thank all the partners, UNESCO, and all the partners that has made this possible. With me from Zimbabwe is an ancient instrument called the mbira. The mbira is used to do different rituals in our nation, for rainmaking, for celebrations, for weddings, for anything really. It is an ancient instrument. And I'd like to ask Cecile to come and present this gift from Zimbabwe on behalf of all the artists in Zimbabwe, myself and the Ndere Arts Trust. Thank you so much for having us. Cecile.
Thank you. This gift is in consideration of our partners, and especially for this Afro Asian Night for the FDCP as our special partner. And of course, also in the afternoon, we had a festival for our international delegates tomorrow, and that's with the DepEd also as a partner. Sustainable Development Goal says partnership is the key to achieve our goal of caring for people, planet, pushing for prosperity and peace through partnerships. So for this Afro-Asian Night, we thank all of our partners and our guests and our international community of artists. Thank you. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for our night to bridge Afro-Asian collaboration.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the President Emeritus of ITI Philippine Center, Madam Cecile Guidote Alvarez.
First of all, as through the gift, we wanted to acknowledge our partner for this pioneering effort of establishing a pathway for cultural collaboration between the Asian region and the African region, especially through film. We have been demonstrating all disciplines of the arts, synergized with technology in order to help our country fulfill our commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda. And we are proud that we have our community of artists from all over the Philippines, Mindanao, Visayas, and Luzon, and of course, our international artists right now present. Let me just say, of course, first, our partner for as Associate Director, Mr. Victor Sibek from the Colombian ITI Center, Co-President and also Chairman of the South-South Cooperation Council. From Brazil, Mr. Jefferson de Araujo Facundes, who is also President of the Brazilian ITI Center and also Chair of the Committee for Emerging Artists. From South Korea, from the Seoul Institute of the Arts, Ms. Aryum Jang. From Thailand, Ms. Parapasorn Kunmuang. From Bangladesh, Ms. Srimonti Sengupta Puja. Indonesia, Mr. Agung Gunayan. Spain, Ms. Nazaret Vasquez Anton. India, Ms. Swati Simha. Again, together with Gertrude, we have also another partner from Zimbabwe, Mr. Tawanda Pumuyaramba. From Cambodia, we have the chargé, Mr. Makakara Vin, and Japan, Mr. Horoko Nagai. And of course, from FDCP, we are very honored that we have with us the chairman, Yusek Lisa Dino. Thank you for this cooperation and all the other FDCP team that is here. Ms. Maisa Ilustrisimo, J.V. Santos, David Fabros, and of course, our very well-known and appreciated singer, none other than Isa Sigera. We also wish to acknowledge the Honorary Consul General, His Excellency Mr. Rufino, and Isemita Blay from Ghana also is here, and also all our partners for tomorrow. Please don't miss the International Festival Collection of Performances, which we are allied with the National Commission for Culture and the Arts that is headed by Nick Lisaso. For, the presentation will be at the Metropolitan Theater, and the partnership program is through DepEd Yusek Tonesito Omali and his team who is with us. And we'd also again wish to acknowledge all of our artists, the community of artists participating for this program, the Afro-Asian Night. We hope that through the performance, or rather the film in Ghana, which is especially presented tonight to our very special guests, we hope that we can bridge really some kind of pathway where we can connect, link Asia with Africa, Asia as the spine first here in the Philippines and Africa, of course, through this film in Ghana. So before we begin the showing, we would like first to ask Yusek Lisa Dino to give her welcome and opening remarks for this occasion, for this common vision. And eventually we'll also have Mr. Attorney Chair of SSCC, Victor Sibek, who is very much involved in the production of this film. There is an anniversary of the United Nations to remember the history of slavery, and it's most relevant as now we are concerned, or we see the cause of Black Lives Matter in the Philippines. We're saying indigenous lives matter, and that's why we're glad the Manila Hotel President Joelina, who's also president now of our Philippine Center of ITI, has allowed some creative industries from our indigenous peoples to be available for you if you like them. And I'm sure you'll find them most interesting and precious. Now may we ask Yusek Lisa Dino for her comment.
Thank you, Ma'am Cecile. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Honorary Consul Carlos Rufino, and Sir Chair Victor Sibek, magandang gabi po. Good evening, and welcome to the Philippines. FDCP is very much honored to partner with the Sustainable Development Goals of that is being presented tonight, and how we are connecting Africa and the Philippines. FDCP is all about collaboration, and for the last 5 years since I became the chair of the FDCP, we have done nothing but to just really connect and link together the Philippines with the different parts, with the different countries all over the world. And it's very important right now for us to work together, for us to tell our stories, to find commonalities among these countries, and really bring out what makes the Philippines and the rest of the world having this shared vision and culture. The FDCP has been a partner in a lot of foreign embassies through the film festivals, because we believe that cinema is the bridge that connects different cultures together as one. And admittedly, we have not done anything yet to connect with Africa, even Latin America. And I hope that this is going to be a start for us to have film festivals that we can do and we can hold here in the Philippines, as well as special programming that we can initiate with important film festivals in this part of the world to introduce Philippines and our cinema. So, Ma'am Cecile, maraming salamat po for initiating and creating this opportunity to link Africa, Asia, especially the Philippines, to work together towards an advocacy. And I hope that the rest of our artists, filmmakers, creators who are here can also join and participate in this goal for us to have a common vision, to have a shared vision of achieving peace, achieving partnerships through cinema. And with that, maraming salamat po, and enjoy the film.
Thank you, Ms. Liza Dino, the chair of the Film Development Council of the Philippines. And now, to give us an introduction of tonight's highlight, let us welcome the chairman of the South-South Cooperation Council, Mr. Victor Sibek. A round of applause, please.
Thank you very much, and a wonderful idea to dedicate this evening to the partnership between Africa and Asia through Philippines, and indeed other countries that Cecile has named. It actually makes also a great historic reason to celebrate this partnership, because many people in Africa do not know that for 30,000 years there has been a very large black community in north part of Luzon. And Cecile, at her work in the United Nations, was always saying that it is not possible to appreciate fully African diaspora without actually appreciating communities here. Now, why we chose this docu-fiction? We call it docu-fiction because the basis for the film is a play called Slaves by a famous Ghanaian playwright, Mohamed Abdallah. But that would obviously have a very limited appeal. The play was performed in the United States, got quite a lot of fame since its premiere in 1972. So what we try to do is intersperse this nucleus of a theater play with all the social, political, and other commentaries on vestiges of modern slavery, because we have slavery even today, literally all over the world, including even in Europe, like white slave trade, and of course, particularly in view of the Black Lives Matter, to examine the harm which racial discrimination causes across the globe, and then to see whether it is actually possible to have some sort of catharsis and some sort of reconciliation. So that was the purpose of this film. Director is a well-known Swiss director based in Barcelona, Bernd Alder, and we shot it in Ghana with the generous help of the Ministry of Tourism, Art and Culture, and I want to acknowledge the Honorary Consul of Ghana and 2 members of Ghanaian diaspora here in the Philippines. And also, Justice Tribal community is very important in Philippines, so also in Ghana, they very much emphasize the values of tradition, that with all the phenomena of globalization, not to forget the extraordinary value of culture. And I think that also is another reason for making this movie, because European colonial powers very successfully justify colonization by saying that they brought all these Africans without any culture, and then the white man came with the Bible in one hand and culture in another, and then everybody got civilized. And in fact, nothing could be further from the truth, because there are obelisks in Ethiopia, in Aksum, nearly 2,000 years old. The most splendid vestiges of Roman civilization are not actually in Italy, they're in Libya, in Leptis Magna, and of course mosque in Kairouan, and then one of the oldest universities in the world, older than many European, is in Fez in Morocco, and there was another very well-known university in 13th century in Timbuktu. So as a result of that, it was precisely in Ghana that they decided to open the biggest cultural institution on African continent, named Pan-African Heritage World Museum, and it will celebrate the wealth and extraordinary splendor of African culture. I was very honored to be named the special advisor to this museum, which will be inaugurated in September 23. And it is on that occasion that we are also supporting the movement to bring all the cultural wealth that was plundered during colonial period and taken to museums of Europe and the United States. So you might have read in the press that there are already moves to bring some of them, and some universities in Britain in particular have already returned some famous Ife bronzes. So just in conclusion, I would like you to watch this movie now that you understand why we made it. And we're very pleased to have got some interest from Hollywood to continue production of docufiction, initially in 8 other countries of the world. And because of my long association with the Philippines, that ranges some 35 years, we have put Philippines at the top of the list. So we hope that next year we will have a docufiction in Philippines and then another one in the Pacific island of Kiribati. Thank you very much, and enjoy the show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Victor Sebek, the chairman of the South-South Cooperation Council.
Ajayawe, wayai, Yahweh, Wayai, Gamean Yomanye, Yahweh, Aja Yahweh,
Yeah, I think that growing up, I've always been uh, an artist that loves nature, and more or less I work solely on commission basis. I'm not the exhibition type. I normally work based on commissions, and I try to tell my own story based on my upbringing. So most of the work that I do are based on my background as an African and as a Ghanaian, and I always try to bring that into what I do. So most of my works, you see that trace of the African effect or the African culture or the African struggle. So that is what has influenced me up until now. Yeah.
And we think alike. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah.
And we throw it on the table where nobody is the master. We all make mistakes. And I've always told people in my studio not to try to be perfect, but always strive for progress.
Yeah.
The progress I mean is that we all make mistakes, And I mean, when we were doing the project, I mean, from the beginning, we had to calculate a lot of stuff. We ran into a few problems and we solved it.
Yeah.
And we still solve a lot of problems
Yeah.
along the way. And we're anticipating that problems should come.
Yeah, a lot.
And that's why we're here,
I come from an environment where, we don't really value art. And I think that, through some of these works that I do, I try to, push that agenda of people, seeing the lights about the importance of art. So I think that we've come to the point where, we should open our arms and then should embrace art, because it's a very important tool through which you can use to express yourself, to tell your story, to document history. So it's an avenue that I always, given a chance, anytime I get the opportunity to talk to anybody, it's a point that I always want to raise, that art is a very powerful tool that should be embraced, because it's a medium through which a lot of things can be said. Right.
And without art, our lives will be reduced to a mundane task for survival. And art, when words fail, art speaks.
Yeah.
That is why, if you're trying to find a history of a people, you dig into their art, the civilization. So now, the period that we are in Ghana right now, if in 100 years they have to find out what went on, they have to dig into the art. And I encourage people in my philosophy not to be lazy, because laziness creates impossibilities. And where people care not to do some things, they shelter themselves under the persuasion that it can never be done. So we can do it. All of us can do it together. People should not be afraid of the present or the future, because the future is where the dream is. But in other words, the thing that always clouds our mind is fear. And once fear is dealt with, the fate of fear is done, is dead.
It's actually a piece commissioned by one of the paramount chiefs in Ghana, Nana Prajinsem, the paramount chief of Asenkushia. And I think that during the slave trade, there was a slave route that went through his village. So he's trying to build this tourism site. So he came up with the idea that, can we do something about the tomb of the unknown slave? A lot of these slaves died through transit. So it is a piece that is supposed to represent the slaves that died, in transit. So we're going to build a tomb, and then we're going to place this on it to serve as, a reminder of what our ancestors went through. So that is where the piece is going. It is for the tomb of the unknown slave. Yeah.
You play the flute very well, young man. Who taught you?
Old Sego there did. Sego taught me a very nice Bambara song the other night.
I'd love to hear that too, please.
But please, Baba, if I play for you, would you tell us something about yourself?
Yes, Baba, yes, yes, Baba. See, I can even dance for you whilst Tunde plays his flute. Please, Baba, then you tell us about yourself. Please, Baba, please. Baba.
Let me think about it. Okay. Why don't you play the flute and you dance? If I like your dance, I'll tell you about myself. Don't cry, little girl. No. You're a beautiful young woman and a graceful dancer. Don't let those tears mar your pretty face.
Baba,
Yes.
you promised to tell us about yourself.
What do you want to know?
Who are you?
Where do you come from?
My name is Idokani Bakanshoro.
That is Hausa.
What does it mean, Baba Mi?
See with your eyes and keep your mouth shut.
I don't mean that, my children. Don't be angry. They call me Anta where I come from. My father came from one place and my mother another. They met and got married, and I was born. I have lived a good life for some time, until I became too dangerous. And they sold me into this.
Where were you born? What is your tribe?
Son, the man has told you his tribe. The first time he opened his mouth, he spoke Hausa.
Baba, I am not a Hausa man. I have traveled to many places and I speak many tongues. My son, it is enough for now. It's late. Sleep. I'll tell you more tomorrow.
But
Olodumare, can't you shut your mouth?
Don't interfere, Baba. Don't spoil our friendship.
So my prince decides to talk at last.
So, now the dog and the bitch have managed to fool themselves together at last.
Maybe it is your mother who is the dog and your father who is the bitch. When you saw me.
Have I mentioned your name?
Oh, you dare not. Nonsense.
Look here, Morgan, and you, woman. Why do you spend so much of your little energy spitting so much hatred upon each other? Look, woman, he did not put those chains on your feet. And you, Morgan, did she make a slave out of you?
You are right, my son. Listen to him, for he talks sense. The tuber catches you and puts you in the belly of the stone monster, with chains around your necks, hands and legs. Instead of you breaking the chains and fighting the tuber, you want to tear each other to pieces.
No, Baba. White man will buy you, yes. He will take you to his country, yes. And if you get there alive, he will sell you to another white man who will make you work and sweat so that he can live like a king. The white man is not guilty in the first place.
Who is guilty?
Who took you away from your homes? Your wives and your children, your grandchildren and your people, and sold you to the men who brought you here. Tell me that. Answer me that.
Who?
Black man. Your own brother. Black man.
I will kill you before you blame the slavery on our collective conscience.
I do not blame the slavery upon our people, my sister. But what I speak is the truth. Trade, my warrior sister, is buying and selling. Our people are selling and the white man is buying. Our people are selling their own kith and kin to the Wazungu, and you know that is true, Ayanda.
You know the white man does not just buy slaves. He snatches them. He steals them. He kidnaps them.
If he can. When he can. But most of the time, he can't.
But don't the white man also buy slaves from the Arabs? Are the Arabs not also guilty? They have been selling our people across the desert sands long before the white men came to our shores.
It is true. The black people sell our brothers and sisters to the Arabs, who in turn sell them to the Wazungus. It is also true that the Arabs have been in the business of enslaving black people longer before the white man.
Human beings have enslaved one another since the beginning of time. But this evil that the white man has brought upon our people gives slavery a whole new meaning. Slavery has never been so cruel, so inhuman since Olodumare created this world.
Since the white man stepped on our shores, nothing has been the same. They have turned our whole world upside down and our people against each other.
The saw that will kill a dog begins on its head.
What are you talking about, man? Our leaders are busy trying to drive the white man away.
This is true, Ayanda. But this is the beginning of a long struggle.
Then I shall come with you. From today onwards, you are my brother.
And you are my sister, Ayanda.
We all agree then. Tomorrow night, we call upon the gods and our ancestors to help us. And I shall prepare you, my children, for your great mission. And night after tomorrow night, we strike. Bite your chains, everyone, and swear before Ogun. The God of Ayu will strike you dead if you betray our secret. Swear, Magan. I swear. And you, woman?
I swear.
Tunde, my child. And you, little girl? Swear you will keep your little mouth shut.
We swear, Baba, by the spirit of our ancestors and the souls of the unborn, I swear.
If I tell, may the gods of my ancestors wreak vengeance on my soul. I swear.
Out! All of you! Out! Woman, you stay. I want to talk to you. What was the swearing about?
What swearing?
Oh, I see. You have sworn to keep it a secret.
What secret? Look, man, what are we going to do about this?
About what?
I told you last night that I'm going to have a baby. Your baby.
And so?
And so perhaps if you tell me what we are going to do about it, I'll tell you what the swearing was about.
Do you know what this is? Touch it. Feel it. Try it on. Do you know what they call it upstairs? Slave jewelry. Here, try the other one too. Beautiful woman. This jewelry looks so beautiful on your royal wrists. I guess the other couple looks beautiful on your ankles too.
That's not funny, Thomas. Please take them off.
Now, you want me to tell you what I'm going to do with your baby before you tell me what the swearing is all about, right?
Please, Thomas. Please stop it.
You have a beautiful body, woman. Your skin is smooth, like the coat of a panther.
My wrist is hurting, Thomas. Please, please stop it.
And look at that. See how it ripples and shakes. Have you ever seen the backs of the other slaves, woman? Have you ever seen the marks and the scars on their backs? Answer me. Have you?
Yes, I have.
How do you think they come by those marks and scars? This is how they get all those scars and marks. You want me to tell you what I'm gonna do with the baby in your stomach before you tell me what you and your fellow slaves are planning, right? All right, I will tell you. 50 lashes is all you need. By the time I count 50, that precious baby will melt into a paste of blood, which will drip down your thighs and legs onto the ground beneath you. 5, 6, 7.
I'll tell you, Thomas.
What was the swearing about?
They are planning to kill you. The silent one has spoken. He's planning a war to escape and lead his men in a war against slave trade.
I, Thomas, overseer of the slaves, I'm supposed to die. And when am I supposed to die?
My name is Muhammad bin Abdullah. The slaves is one of my earliest plays. I wrote it in the course of a night, one night, in Cape Coast Castle, where the dungeon is, where the story occurs. In the dungeon, I went there and we went down into the basement. I just couldn't take it. I hear the same day they were planning for Roberta Flack to do a recording in the dungeon, but she couldn't either. She broke down. I was shocked by the fact that we were not standing on the actual stone floor of the dungeon. We were standing on a heap of dung, human dung, feces, urine, that had come up and covered the entire floor. And I just couldn't take it. I said to myself, this is a place which is sacred.
I went to the Cape Coast Castle and I asked them to open the dungeon for me, and that's when I realized that, damn, there's no way as a person I could have survived. I have allergies, I'm claustrophobic, all the negatives when it comes to little spaces, darkness, and I wondered how these slaves were able to make it. Because definitely I could never have survived just a minute in that dungeon. There's no air coming in, it's just heat. When you enter the dungeon, you can still smell the stench of human beings, the heat that emanated out of their bodies. You can still feel all that. Everything comes to play.
Quiet noise in the dungeon where it is quiet, but then the noises of the cries of the people who have passed through the dungeons and lost their lives and their wailings. And if you are in tune with nature and your ancestral beliefs, you would hear these noises. So as you stay in the dungeon for a while and things keep going back and forth, and you see the oblivion that is going on within your people not understanding what needs to happen in a situation like this to change the story, you have to talk.
Being in the dungeon, well, it's a place I wouldn't love to be, honestly.
And so when you're in a position where you can't do anything for yourself, you have to do what you are told. You are forced to, be in one small place with a lot of people. And basically, you don't have a voice. You lose your identity because the person who has caged you in there does not even see your worth, or they don't think you can even be anything. They want to use you for what they feel like you should be for them.
So when we had the conversation about metamorphosing or transporting the actors, not physically into the dungeon, but using a chroma key and technically transporting them into the castle, I felt at ease. I felt at peace. Because I don't know what would have happened if I'd gone with the artist and used that space, that physical space, that historic space, that almost near impossible space to record. Probably wouldn't have just been me. I'm sure a lot of the artists would have broken down.
I sat on the parapet, like here, with my back against the wall, my profile to the sea, and I could see, and beneath me were the guns, the cannons that pointed out to the sea. Why did the Europeans need cannons, guns, to face the sea? Were they fighting among themselves? I thought that they would rather have it face the town, that if there's an uprising, they could use it. So I said, well, let me just do what I can with it. And I began to write the play.
There's a part I quite remember when we did this play for some African Americans. They objected to it, but sometimes before we can make progress, we need to admit our shortcomings. It is only when we admit our shortcomings that we can also confront the issue head on. But if we pretend all is well, but everything, any negativity with regard to slavery must be shifted to the white man, I don't agree, because at a point in time, when the white man came, they bought it from some people, from people. Who were these people? They were blacks.
I think it's very important to look at the theme of slavery, even though many of us obviously didn't experience it. The history is there, the memory lives on. However, in today's world, we see some kind of slavery, not like what we know from the past, but we still see some kind of slavery going on.
The new age slavery is not in shackles, but in a mindset. You know, so some people have built a prison of their own in their mind. For example, if you have an imagination or revelation of what you have to do, but you don't do it, it comes up in the future where you are in a closed environment. You can move forward, and of course you can move backwards. So my idea is to free our mind. And the next area where I look at slavery is in debt. You know, some people have to take loans from the banks, and they have to keep on paying the bank, and some countries do that, and that is, to me, that is human servitude. You know.
Fine. In our modern days, we are not into slavery when it comes to human beings, but we find ourselves in many forms of slavery. Being it mental slavery, educational slavery, trade, barriers, and all these things.
Slavery, the transatlantic slavery, is a reality. We can't forget about it. Even now, from the submission of so many people, there's still some kind of slavery going on.
Well, I think that it's a very controversial and sensitive subject, you know, the issue of slavery, you know, how our ancestors were treated. Mm-hmm. So it's a subject that, you know, sometimes we are not very comfortable talking about because, you know, it brings up a lot of very bad memories. Yes, yes. So personally, I'm not very comfortable, you know, talking about that subject. But, well, I mean, human beings have evolved, and we can't still be living in the past, even though we always dwell on the past to, you know, project into the future. But whatever happened has happened. We need to move forward. Yes, so that's what I believe in. Yeah.
The slaves is really about power. Who is wielding that power? Who is holding on to that power? Who has the strength to make it across the Atlantic?
Well, personally, I think it's not their fault. It's not their fault. Whatever that happened, it's not their fault. I feel like...
Whose fault are you talking about?
I'm saying the whole thing about colonization, slavery, and all those things, it just happened. It has happened. You get it?
It didn't just happen. Yeah, it has happened.
Yeah, it has happened. I mean, there were some African who were also into this slavery business, and they were doing all sorts of things to them. It has happened. It's time to let go. It's time to accept the new us. I mean, we are now not in chains. We are not in dungeons. There are still other...
We lost a lot.
Yeah, but now it's...
No, we lost a lot. So don't say we are not in chains. We are in chains.
If we are going to... If we are going to still have those thoughts of we losing a lot, then what are we going to... Based on that, we have learned a lot, and now we are going to build on that for we are going to build on that to get to where we are supposed to get. Now it's not like we are in chains, they are beating us and all those things again.
The tyranny, the evil of the slavers and slavery itself, the pain it carries to the people and from the people, the visions it gives to people of what slavery all meant and what African slaves were going through.
Honestly, this production is what got me to come to terms, to face colonization as it is. I've always been avoiding the topic, just being optimistic, not looking at what the processes or what had happened or anything, but due to this production last time, I was able to gather courage to watch some documentaries on the whole situation, and it actually got to me. I just kept wondering various situations and scenarios, how I'm not an African American and they feel lost. Some of them feel lost where they are, and I'm just wondering, did my ancestor actually was she hiding? Was he hiding? What was happening? All of those things, human zoos and those things. I used to think it's okay. We can just move past this. But watching that documentary for me just made me face reality that it hurt, and I just don't get why you would come to someone's home, the person would receive you nicely, and I know African culture is so high on treating visitors so nice, and I see your skin and I feel your skin is beautiful, but you look at me and you think mine is awful. I think it's a beginning process for me personally. People have gone through it. I have been avoiding it and trying to escape the whole situation. I think this production is just what makes me come close to it.
Have I felt discriminated against?
Discriminated? Yes, I'll say yes. I'll say yes. Yes, I have.
Yes. In our own community, we visited a village and we went with some white people. And you could see that the people were trying to give them much reverence to we the blacks because they saw them, I don't know what they saw in them. And I think this is all boiled down to wrong indoctrination, that anything foreign is good, but anything local is not good. But here is the case, people will not see the discriminatory aspect of it because they think you are their own. But in giving preference because of color or race, giving preference over your own to another person is also another, and it sometimes it can be so traumatic. I felt rejected and wanted. It's like I was of no value. So even if before me, my own presence, that people are treating me this way, what will happen in my absence? Or even if I were to produce something as a local man, how would they patronize it with regard to something that is brought from outside?
Every time that I am out of here, when I say here, I mean Africa, Ghana, I become the minority in whichever space that I find myself. And when I'm a minority, I realize that if I don't speak up, if I don't say anything, my rights, who I am, everything is twatted upon, and I become lost in the community like that. And I also realize that every time I find myself home, that is when I feel like I am the most powerful to want to talk about things.
Outside Europe, we go to the airport and it's about time for us to check out. We've done everything possible, and then now we had one of our members who was called in and questioned just right at the airport. I met this lady and she was like, are you also on board? I said, yes, I'm part. We are a team. We are traveling a team. Oh, really? So do you people also travel? I said, yes, we do travel. What is it? He said, no. And I was asking, is that your first time seeing us, as travelers? And he's like, no, excuse me, but I'm not expecting you people to travel because what we believe is that you people are like I'm like, excuse me. Then she asked the question, how did you come about? Were you sponsored? And I said, I was not sponsored. I'm in a traveling team, please. Oh, really? So you also do travel? I said, yes, I do travel. Then we went in, there was a restaurant at the airport, and we all sat down. Immediately we went in to sit. A few Europeans were there, or probably put it in white, and they all had to get out of the place because we blacks entered the restaurant. We're like, wow. So we later asked the waiter, are they done? He said, no, they are going out because people came in. We felt really bad. We felt really, really bad.
I think that it will be very untruthful for any human being to say that we haven't looked down on anybody. I must say that it wouldn't be conscious, but I think unconsciously we all have, including myself, but as much as possible, I like to look out for people, and I try not to look down on people.
I will not stand here and say I haven't done that before. I might have done that a couple of times. But I want to use my words advisedly, unknowingly, but I know definitely I've discriminated against one or two people before.
These are little things that we do consciously or unconsciously, but we don't want to admit it. When you talk about racism, what people want to think about is, oh, there are some whites chanting anti-racism against blacks, but that is not it. We have to look within ourselves, the kind of discriminatory practices that we exhibit towards our own. We need to change all this mental attitude.
I normally don't enjoy playing the bad guy, actually, because I don't know, sometimes he wakes certain things up in my heart, and it makes me feel bad because there was no way, or there is no way that I could ever even think of behaving this way in real life, even though there are lots of others, I should say, fellow bronies, let me say it this way, that they really don't give a damn, and they would just behave anyhow. And I've seen some of them, sometimes I even fight with them. And I can also say that it actually reflects, I don't like to say this, but I think I have to. It reflects reality in a way, because by and large, as a majority, I would say probably I don't like to use that term, but let's say the white or the Western, the Caucasian population, Caucasian is even restrictive, but let's say the Western style population many a times doesn't regard the African continent and other places considered to be the third world. They don't regard those parts of the world, and neither do they regard those living in those parts of the world as humans as much as they are. And that's a sad, hard reality which I think is still ongoing, still deeply rooted, and we still need to do so much to take it off. And as for that one, I'm not that optimistic about how long and if ever it will be possible even to really eradicate it. You know, that there is a kind of stereotype here in Ghana, and I guess all over, probably West Africa. I can't say about the other places, but I believe probably it's a continental stuff that European, or let's say the white person is considered rich, is considered that he lives in a certain way, he speaks in a certain way, he dresses in a certain way, and in some cases that perception is kind of hated, but not all the time. Sometimes it's just stigmatized, like Obroni is rich, and Obroni cannot live amongst, let's say, Africans, or live the way the local life is like. But well, I think it's gradually fading off.
I have a friend who recently, when we're having this discussion about the Achimota and dreadlocks debate, she was very emotional about this whole thing, to the extent that she left our year group. And then I spoke to her, backdoor, and she's going through a lot. She's fighting every day. She's fighting every day at work, everywhere she goes. And I wouldn't have thought that that is still going on today, in today's world, but it looks like something she's very emotional about. So it also made me sensitive or compassionate about where she was coming from. But otherwise, I would not have thought that it was that intense.
There's always the desire to change. Have where you are coming from is equally powerful, and if your power can transcend the shores of Africa into their world, then you can cause a little change wherever it is you find yourself. Then they would want to know about you. Then they would want to understand about your culture. Then they will understand that what they think of you is not what it is. But you would have to be the one to propel this.
I think as a young person living in America, I think most of
not being well informed about something. I think that encompasses what ignorance is. Because if you are to be informed, you will not be ignorant about whatever is at stake. So I think that ignorance simply is not being well informed about a certain or whatever is being discussed. Yeah.
And to me, knowing is not enough. It's to be wise at the same time, because a smart person is different from a wise man. A smart person will make mistakes and correct it, but a wise man will try to find that smart person and avoid the mistakes all over.
And our children, we should also give them the opportunity to express themselves. For instance, when Tunde was asking questions, at a point in time, I shouted on him, "Keep your mouth shut." Look at it. These are some of the things that make our children timid. I think even as children or women in society that normally we discriminate against, we should give everybody opportunity to express him or herself. Sometimes they may have a solution to something, but we tend to relegate them to the background. If we are not careful, we may also indoctrinate them consciously or unconsciously to also hate the white color. But all that we have to let them know is that we are all equal. Because if we don't treat it dispassionately, it's going to work against what we are now crying over. That's the discrimination. Because the hatred and everything, if you are not careful, you don't treat it well, a time may come whereby they will also try to revenge for their forefathers and all these things. Let them understand that what they did fine is not good, but we should not retaliate, but rather should see each other as brothers and go equal in what aspect that we find ourselves.
I feel I'm going to use myself as an example. It's not like I'm a child out of interracial marriage, but just make an example of myself where I go to my hometown and I'm not able to speak as fluent in my native language, my mother tongue, as fluent as they are speaking. Yet I go to I meet white people whom English is their mother tongue, and then I'm not able to speak that too. I feel lost. I feel I don't know where I belong. So I feel the two people decided to come together to produce that child should make a conscious effort of trying to give an identity to the child with both aspects of themselves. Make the child understand who he is, who she or he is. Yeah.
The young people were very angry at us, who are their predecessors, who are the ones who are going to lead them. If it's a question, if they're demonstrating against money, the loans that the government, we adults and older people are taking, there's every possibility that we would die off and leave them with bills that they might not be able to pay.
Lead a life that will be an exemplary one to our generation. Because if we don't take up the leadership role, we have our followers. So if you don't lead a life that will be inspirational to the youth, they will all go astray. Because if they don't find any inspiration in us, they will tend to follow whatever is presented to them. So we have to hold in high esteem our cultural heritage.
There's healing. There's definitely healing. As to how one heals, I think it differs with everybody. There's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. You can be in the tunnel and you see darkness, or you can be in the tunnel and you can focus on the light. I think that everybody who has been depressed, going through anything painful, should just focus on the light.
It's so much pain, but what can we do? We can't do anything about it. And this has really affected a lot of our things, the way we think in Africa. I don't know about other African countries, but I'm speaking on behalf of my own country. It's because I know if God created man as his own image, so we are all image of God. Because if you can speak to me, I can speak to you back. We can understand each other. That is God.
know. For me, it's fine. I feel like for me, it's fine. You know, there's a bit of an acceptance of whatever form, whatever will come in. So that's fine. But I think, especially about my daughter, and I think about the world in which she's growing up in, and if there is not a change, if there is not a transformation of acceptance in every way, that she would not. She questions me about her hair, and you know, and she tied a stocking to her hair, so it's so long that it will touch her back. So she feels like she's I don't know. But lucky enough, her mom is such a powerful person in the studies of undoing racism that she runs workshops and things for her, and she tries very hard every day.
In his autobiography, he said, nothing. You cannot do anything. So he went back. Later, he himself said, if he was to meet that woman again, he would tell her something different.
I think that sometimes, I'm sorry. I think that sometimes we need to literally hold people's hands. Literally hold people's hands. Hug them, be there for them, talk with them. Just listen to them. Sometimes don't even talk, just listen to them. So,
irrespective of the different backgrounds that we come from, we are all human.
Yeah.
And that is the key thing, that to see ourselves as human and not as white or black or Nigerian or Ghanaian or that kind of divisions. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we are human.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Why would you hate another human being because of the color of their skin? Because of the food they eat? Because of the religion they practice? Because of their culture? Because of whatever it is? Why would you want to do that? I kind of look at them and I wonder, have they no other thing to do? Do they have so much free time and energy to hate another person simply because of probably the color of their skin? Why?
In this small room, that's how amazing it is that we get to have the whole world in this small room. And it's a great thing to have the Ambassador of Colombia, who is the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, the Ambassador of Italy, Ambassador of Mexico, and all our friends. We also have Dr. Luck, who is also from Israel here.
Your Majesty, Good morning. My name is Daniela Dorlandi. I'm the ambassador of Italy. I'm very pleased to be here today.
My name is Tim Zagesseman, attaché of the Embassy of Switzerland here in Accra.
I come from Colombia, where Medino Tematico just addressed you, and whilst we do not have exactly tribal chiefs, we are a very heterogeneous community with many, many different ethnic and racial groups, and for us, traditions are very important.
And in His Majesty rests an amazing understanding of righteousness.
I'm very pleased today, in fact, having you all come here to grace this occasion. Ghana State, like you said, needs the peace, needs the unity, in spite of its diversity. The Ghana language is suddenly almost disappearing, and we need partners to be able to maintain this heritage, our culture, our tradition, our rhythm, our dance. We need security to be able to keep all these traditions in place.
In the past, Cartagena was the official port in which the transatlantic traffic took place, and from the Africa they would arrive to the Americas through the Atlantic, and it was one of the ports and the official one, and so it became Colombia. That's why we are so rooted close to Ghana and to Africa.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Ulysses from Ghana. And now may we call in front Ms. Cecile Guidote Alvarez.
We are going to have a forum, a public dialogue, but just before that, we had planned, but time is getting long, so we will show, just to have a Philippine counterpart, a very short film on heritage. It's really from a popular book that was written by an artist who is now a teacher in Chicago, but has written a wonderful children's book to appreciate his birthplace, his memory of habitat, heritage, tradition, creative industries, and it's a wonderful children's educational book that is now transformed into a very short animated version, just to have an idea, because this is also a UNESCO concern, heritage preservation. It's very short, just to show it before we call on those who have kindly agreed to be our moderator, co-moderator. Of course, Teddy Cole, very well-known film critic and film historian who used to head the Committee on Film of NCCA, and of course we also have Mr. David Fabros for FTCP so that we can get the comments. And we will first view this or get the sister of Ray de la Cruz, who is the author of the book, to just give you a very brief commentary or summary about it. And we'll show the film, and from there, we also had, but we'll show it tomorrow, the chairman of our Philippine Committee on Dance, who is simultaneous also as chairman of the NCCA Dance Committee. We asked her to create or gather through dance, but filmed, their reflection, dance groups' reflection on the SDGs. So tomorrow that will be what we will have as part of this and the convergence planning that will happen among our international delegates and our guests. So may we call on a brief summary, and you'll see the animated version of transformation of a book, a popular book for children.
To introduce to us Ballesteros on My Mind, let us welcome Miss Karen Hino Killer, the niece of Dr. Ray de la Cruz and sister of film director Carlo Garcia Hino. A round of applause, please.
Hello, good evening everyone. I'm Karen Hino Keeler. I'm the niece of Dr. Ray de la Cruz, and I have with me the book that Madam Cecil mentioned earlier. And also I'm the sister of of the film director. The movie is adopted from this book with the same title, Ballesteros on My Mind, by Uncle Ray, and he is currently based in Glenview, Illinois. He started writing and directing plays at high school. He even won the prestigious Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature in 1972 at the age of 17. And this was for his work, Konbensyon ng Mga Halimaw, or Monsters Convention, which is a satire on the Philippine Constitutional Convention. In 2019, the film director and animator Carlo Hino graduated in 3D animation in Canada. And this brought about the collaboration between the two artists. And together with Kuya Boji Pascual, he's known here in the Philippines, and JC Hino, Carlos' son, provided voice acting for the animation. So let us watch this short film as Uncle Ray reminisces on his childhood days in Ballesteros on My Mind. Thank you.
Ballesteros is on my mind. I grew up by the West Philippine Sea. My hometown, Ballesteros, is in the province of Cagayan, on the northernmost tip of the island of Luzon. I knew there were places beyond my little world of Ballesteros, because whenever I turned on the battery-operated radio, I heard programs coming from Taiwan and China. The West Philippine Sea on the edge of the town was the main attraction in Ballesteros. The residents went to the beach to relax and have a good time. My friends and I enjoyed playing on the sand. I got you! We also loved watching the sun slowly go down. Many of the residents earned their living from fishing. Sometimes in the afternoons, my siblings, cousins, and I helped the fishers haul in their huge nets. As reward, we were given a handful of their catch.
Thanks. This will be our dinner tonight.
When the tides ebbed, small shellfish called gaka were left on the sand. Gaka could be found only in a few coastal towns of Cagayan. Fishers would wade into the waist-deep seawater and scoop the gaka out of the sand, using a basket with a bamboo handle called tako. Cooking the gaka was simple. Boiling water was poured over the gaka and immediately drained. Then, the shells were ready to be opened. Eating the shellfish was a kind of sport. Men popped a few pieces of gaka into their mouths, separated the meat with their teeth, then quickly spat out the shells.
Can you do it again?
My friends and I watched the gaka eaters in amazement. I love it. People told countless stories about the sea. My siblings and I listened to Grand Aunt Inding's tale of a mermaid.
Many years ago, a mermaid appeared several times on the beach to a good-looking gentleman.
The sea was also feared. Every year, at least one person drowned. I rarely went swimming because I was afraid. At night, as I lay in bed, I could hear the loud waves crashing into the beach. Their sounds calming me to sleep. In a dream, I saw my footprints disappear beneath the shifting sands. My friends and I played a lot. The whole town was our playground.
I found you. No, you didn't.
One game we particularly played was the sumka, played by two persons on a wooden board with holes on it.
I won! I have the most number of shells in my house. Wow, congrats.
Thursdays and Sundays were market days in late afternoon. I stood and watched every westward bound kalesa.
Grandma! Oh, hello, grandson.
Most days, Grandma Polga, my father's mother, appeared in one of them. Thanks, Grandma. I spent right away the coins Grandma Polga gave me.
Bulletin.
My first job as a child was selling the newspaper Manila Bulletin.
Manila Bulletin.
It was very late by the time I finished the job. I was paid only a few centavos, but I loved earning money. I attended the Ballesteros Central Elementary School. Most of my schoolmates were children of fishers and farmers. Some of them came to school barefoot. I felt blessed because I wore slippers. We studied hard and also played hard during recess. Our school was like our second home. We helped clean the rooms before and after school. At the end of the day, we even did outside chores, such as pulling out weeds in the schoolyard. A day in early January 1964 is one I can never forget. I was still on Christmas break. Life went on as usual. At the end of the school year, the residents attended the school's closing ceremonies. When the names of the honor students were called, their proud parents came up the stage and pinned ribbons on them. Some members of the audience also went on stage to present gifts to honor students. It was a big event.
Many years later, my family and I came to America. I am now a special education teacher at the John W. Garvey Elementary School in Chicago.
Dr. De La Cruz, where's Ballesteros?
Whenever I get a chance, I tell my students stories of my wonderful childhood in Ballesteros.
Do you think we can go visit Ballesteros tomorrow?
It's not that easy.
we have to take two big planes and travel for about a day. Oh, by the way, this is how kakas look like.
Cool!
I have taught my students how to play the sungka, the game I enjoyed playing as a child. I remember people, places, and events in Ballesteros as if they happened only yesterday. Sometimes I feel like I can still breathe the salty breeze of the sea and hear the whooshing sound of water rushing to the beach. I see my grandma Polda getting off the calesa. My friends calling me to play. Ballesteros is on my mind.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our event tonight. My name is David Fabros, and I'm with the Film Development Council of the Philippines. I work with special projects and external affairs, and I work under Secretary Lisa Dino, over here, my chairperson and CEO. And yes, so we were asked by Ms. Cecil, along with Sir Teddy. Good evening, Sir Teddy.
Good evening.
To co-moderate as a little discussion on what we have witnessed on screen and on stage tonight, which is about the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, quite specifically, the film dealt about slavery and social justice, basically, and I guess we just wanted to learn to hear the comments of those who have seen and witnessed this on screen tonight.
Yes, this is, of course, my first time to see the film. No, and I just saw it here on the spot because Cecile invited me only last night to come and see and lead the moderate this discussion. My name is Teddy Ko. I am the former Commissioner for the Arts at the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. No? And I'm also a film historian. And welcome everybody, and we hope you enjoy the film. It's not your normal feel-good entertainment kind of film. No? In fact, I think it's a very unique structure. No, it's very unconventional because it is, it was done in 5 parts, and it depicts the play, the slaves. No, it's called The Slaves, and then which serves the basis of this film. And at the same time, it is also a film about the film. Yes. See, the second part. The first part is if you remember, the part 1 is an excerpt of the play, and part 2 is the making of the film, and part 3 is a kind of a reflection by the actors on the about discrimination and prejudice, no, as depicted in the film. And part 4 is reconciliation. And part 5 was they showed the ceremony with the king of Ghana. No? So that's the structure of the film. It's, I think, a very, very unique format. No? But there's a very important part of the film, which I think is it's the part 6, which is, I think, the best, would be the most important part of the film, and maybe even the best part, which is the discussion of with the audience. So which is happening now. No? So we've broken the fourth wall of the film. So it's not going to be about the film anymore, but about our perception and your reactions to the film. Yes, so, yes.
Well, yes, Chair Lisa, you were going to comment.
I was very, very personally affected by the film as an actress myself before I became, and I was given the opportunity to be in a position of service, providing service to the industry. Slavery comes in many forms. And that's what, I feel that's what the film is trying to tell us. That yes, we may not be in shackles anymore. It's not physical, we don't see it. We don't see slavery as a physical manifestation of it, but it's transforming into other shapes. And while the FDCP has been aggressively promoting our cinema to the rest of the world, there are plaguing issues that are being experienced by our industry within the walls of the sector. And in one way or another, we see it as a form of slavery. In the film, it says that one of the actors said that slavery is power. It's when this power is being abused by the slave master, and how the people working within that context of within the workforce, for example, if we are not giving equity, if we are not giving them, we're not empowering them, then we are enslaving them. Unfortunately, right now, like what I said, the FTCP, the Philippines is dealing with a lot of structural challenges within the film industry. Right now, the working conditions of our workers, there are no existing enabling laws that would empower them, that would empower our workers to have a voice, to know what their rights are, and to have a leverage in terms of, and a bargaining power as to what is due to them. So this film simulates that. It's a representation of what's really happening also, not just in Ghana, not just in Africa, but all over the world. You know, when we are living in a society where we are not respecting the rights of people, of human beings, when we don't give that respect, then we are no different from them. We are no different from their experiences. So I think it's very important for us to have that self-reflection as well as Filipinos. We know that our country also has some sort of a classist system. There is racism probably, but more on the classes. Like there are, yeah, even especially right now, what's happening with the whole political landscape. There's an elitist, and and I think these are important discussions to have, so that we have the opportunity to actually reflect on how tayo, bilang isang bansa, nagkakaroon ng ganitong klaseng problema, 'di ba? So, sa akin, that's how it's personally affecting me.
Wow, thank you, Charlie. That was such a passionate reaction.
Yes.
I'm sure it's going to fire up the audience. Mr. Sevek, you had a cameo in the film. I saw you. It also has a very interesting title, Ulysses in Ghana. As we know, Ulysses is the famous story written by Homer, about the Greek hero Ulysses, which was also used in the novel by James Joyce, called Ulysses, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. So why is it called Ulysses in Ghana? I think the name Ulysses means
from Ghana. Well, there is actually a very interesting phenomenon, as Consul can also tell you about. Ghanaian president, who truly is a great African leader. It's also very rare for an Anglophone, somebody from Anglophone Africa to speak perfect French, and at every African Union meeting he really leaves unbelievable impression. He's at the moment also chairing ECOWAS, the Organization of West African Countries. So he marked in 2019 500 years of exporting slaves from Ghana to Virginia. And then he called 2019 the year of return. And on that occasion, 1 million African Americans visited Ghana. They were given tax breaks, they were given an opportunity to settle in Ghana, to get even Ghanaian passports, tracing their roots. And it was such a great success that they are now calling it extension of it a year beyond return. And I think it is extremely important for one American actor and producer told me that he now wants to settle in Colombia. He said, I'm rich, I'm successful, but in United States I will always be a second-class citizen because of my color. In part of the Colombia where I come from, the coastal belt of Cartagena, 60% of the people are of African origin. So Ulysses from Ghana was basically, of course, historical Ulysses was looking back for his Ithaca, where his faithful Penelope was waiting for him. But in this particular case, it simply marks the Ulysses from Ghana that was exported in one of the most shameful periods in modern history, where millions of people were basically went, as Colombian ambassadors who 18 African countries said, Cartagena, on the Caribbean coast of Colombia, and Salvador de Bahia, which used to be the capital of Imperial Brazil, were the two largest ports for importing slaves from Africa. And of course, you saw that castle, as the author was saying, living under most inhuman conditions, where the actress said that she couldn't even do. So we did not actually film in the castle. Castle was filmed, and then you had this green screen, which was what I was explaining, and then obviously by giving it proper color, it looks as it was shot there. But in fact, it would have been almost impossible for most people to endure those conditions because of the smell, because of claustrophobia and so on. Many slaves in various castles in Ghana, and the most famous, of course, was the island of Gorée of Dakar in Senegal. That was the biggest outpost for exporting slaves. But you see, there was a very important point made here, and that is, I think I would like to emphasize. They were not just white people catching black slaves like butterflies. They were basically black rulers selling their own people. And this is why one actress has said that you can't just blame the white man. We are all to blame. And now, you see where Africa is still one of the richest continents in terms of natural wealth, and yet one of the poorest, with the greatest famine, particularly in countries like in the Horn of Africa. And now also, because of these great social injustices, a bedrock of terrorism. In fact, just a week ago, African Parliamentary Union and United Nations had a conference on combating terrorism in Africa. And I'm very pleased to say that my organization, together with the African Parliamentary Union and African and European Cultural Parliament, is developing a program on culture and art as a tool for peace in Africa. Because many of the young people are recruited into terrorism because the society doesn't have anything to give them. So if they are not offered sport or to express themselves culturally, they're very good recruits for terrorist organizations because they promise them a better life, if not in this world, then at least after the death.
Wow, thank you for your comments. No, yes, as you said, culture and art is very important. No? That was also the main point of the two artists at the beginning of the film who mentioned that art is a great way of communicating ideas. No, and I think this film shows it. And also, I just reflected also about Ghana, no? Because maybe for the audience here, some of you, many of you would not be so well informed about where Ghana is, and well, of course, it's in Africa. It's one of the biggest, the second biggest country, I think, in Africa, no?
Not at all.
No?
It's not at all a big country. Now that you mentioned geography, there are 54 countries in Africa. And if you look, particularly West Africa, what colonial powers did, they just put these very neat squares, you know, with Cote d'Ivoire and Liberia and Sierra Leone. The borders were set without any concern for national identity. And as a result of that, it is very difficult very often for Africans, for example, somebody in Ghana to call himself Ghanaian, because Ewe tribe, which lives partly in Togo and partly in Ghana, will consider themselves Ewe first and foremost, and only then Ghanaians. That is one of the reasons for the loss of identity. The second one is that the successful, really ruthless policy of colonial powers deprived them of their pride in their national identity. And even now, many of them, like Latin Americans who dream crossing the border of the United States and having a very successful life, many Africans also dream of going there because they were not imbued with a great pride in their extraordinary culture which they have. And some of it is also because Britain, after the fall of Benin, plundered. So the best cultural wealth of Africa is to be found in London, in British Museum, in African Museum, in Chirac Museum in Paris. That's where you see the best works of art. And when they say we want them returned, there was a documentary recently of somebody who actually walked in the museum and took a sculpture. He was arrested. He said, "I'm sorry, I don't have to ask permission of thieves to take back what is essentially mine." And there is a big movement now to return this thing in order to give a contemporary Ghanaian or Ivorian or Togolese or Cameroonian awareness of what great cultural patrimony they have. And hence I mentioned this new institution, Pan-African Cultural Museum of African Patrimony, which should be commissioned in 23. And the idea is that more and more people from other African countries visit and say, wow, as one of the actors was saying, he said, as soon as when I come back from my country, I feel great. As soon as I go abroad, I feel minimized because there is racial discrimination, and I feel, as one of the lead actors said, I have to conform, where his daughter is ashamed of her. This has been basically the policy of colonial powers. And one of the reasons, of course, they now want to declare Swahili, one of the former languages, because there is no common language in Africa. But many East African countries and part of Congo speak Swahili. So they would like it now to be recognized so that the people can express themselves. As somebody was telling me today, that in the Philippines, until you started the Cecilior movement, the plays were only performed in English, as it was something shameful performing in Tagalog, you know. And now, obviously, this bridge has been crossed. So I think the same obviously needs to happen in Africa. More African young people, and I always say that when I speak to them, need to recognize the immense cultural wealth.
Wow, this information makes me want so much to learn more about Africa and its geography, its culture, its history, you know? Because we in the Philippines, we are so far away and we need to study this. We need to learn more about Africa, no? By the way, by way of some kind of trivia, of course, when you say Ghana, I think its most famous citizen, one of its most famous citizens is Kofi Annan, correct? The former Secretary General of the United Nations. Yeah, so at least now we have some kind of connection with Ghana.
And then I think it is, it's important to emphasize, and I'm not saying this only because of honorary consul, but Ghana is a beacon of peace and democracy. Look what is happening in other West African countries. Coup in Guinea, coup in Mali, coup in Burkina Faso. absolutely everywhere, with the army taking the rule. Partly, this is because the so-called democratic systems never managed to do something which a friend of mine, who was former Deputy Minister of Environment in Africa, said: we need leaders that love Africa. And we don't have them. They are all kleptocratic sort of elites, you know. Moi, the former president of Kenya, retired with billions of dollars, whilst most of the population lives in abject poverty. So Ghana truly is an exception. It is now being recognized as the headquarters of Twitter in Africa, and also the headquarters of free economic trade, which was signed by 42 African countries.
Oh, thank you, Mr.
Dr. Sevek?
Dr. Sevek, yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead, please. No, I was going to, I know you were related to me earlier, the many years you've spent in countries and continents all over the world, and you've also told us that you spent a lot of time in the Philippines, right? And you see some commonalities between what's they're experiencing in Africa and what the indigenous peoples in the Philippines are experiencing in terms of their struggles, in terms of fitting in. Do you see, would you like to comment on that?
Well, absolutely. What I particularly appreciate about Cecile, and also her late husband, who was also a very good friend of mine, Jefferson Alvarez, and what she was trying to do in ITI is to place great emphasis on the value of indigenous cultures. I wasn't aware until recently there were over 100 of them in the Philippines. And I think, look, what a wonderful job you did, that you brought some of these products. I always feel that when I travel, that one has to help a little bit the economy. So of course I bought some of the jewelry outside. But you need to be also proud that, you know, Philippines is not just your fabulously beautiful contestants that we always compete. It's either going to be Colombia, Venezuela, or Philippines.
Yes.
So it's not just that. And I think another thing that I also appreciate what Cecile does is to emphasize that theater and all forms of art are not just about very beautiful people, superstars, but that chance should be even given to the handicapped people, which she very correctly calls handicapable. And those of us who were in Santiago port were able actually to see how they perform. And to me, it was actually very moving to see extraordinary big smile on the face of these people who are bound to a wheelchair. It's not really very much joy living like that, but they were on the stage, they were applauded, and they gave me a sense of purpose. And I think that is what one has to do with these people and to all indigenous people. Because if in the world, globalized world, you in the Philippines lose the sort of pride and the emphasis to showcase your indigenous cultures, I think particularly rich in Mindanao. And so that I was converted to your culture after a London performance of Bayanihan. You know, I saw them and I thought, wow, you had everything. You have Spanish, completely Spanish music, because obviously of long Spanish colonial period, and then all sorts of tribal art. I was recently in Misamis Occidental, where the mayor gave us a wonderful display of different tribal groups in north of Mindanao. And I think it is absolutely critical that young people in the Philippines watch that they do not lose track from the importance of indigenous cultures.
How about our honorary consul Rufino? May we have a word from you about this film and what you think of the statements that have been mentioned by all of us here tonight so far?
Thank you very much, Victor. I've learned so much about Ghana from you. Yeah, and I just wanted to add that in Ghana they have a Google Center of Excellence, just to add. So just announced last year. And of course, the very powerful message of slavery. And I'm a businessman, so I look at slavery, and it was a very lucrative industry. So this was an industry that had boards, they had lawyers, they had accountants, they borrowed money, they were insured, they had profit bonus for the ship captain, They laid out the ship so that they could put the most number of people in chains without getting them hurt. It was a terrible business, and a lot of people made money on it. So you look back and say, many fortunes of even countries were based on slavery trade. Talk about opium and so many things. So we're very happy that this presentation from Ghana came out, and I'm sure our people were very interested to find out the very painful history that they've gone through. It reminds me just to say, for example, the Holocaust and people now going back to Palestine. I've been to 2 Holocaust museums where you actually take the passport or visa of someone who's been through a concentration camp. It's very powerful. And this reminded me of something like that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that comment. And I just would like to say also that this is a very unique documentary and, well, docu-fiction, because it starts off with a play, and then it transforms into a documentary. And it's interesting to see the perspective coming from the African people themselves, the story of the slave trade. Because for me personally, my perspective of the slave trade is coming from Hollywood, and maybe highly romanticized. For example, in the TV series called Roots with LeVar Burton many decades ago, and then much later on in the film Amistad, directed by Steven Spielberg. So this is our idea of what the slave trade looked like, which is Hollywood version, which is very kind of, well, not exactly glamorous, but maybe more
dramatic.
Yes, more glossy.
The color purple.
Color purple, things like that, yes. But of course, on the other hand, I also thought, well, without the slave trade, I mean, and this is just in jest, without the slave trade, maybe then there would be no Michael Jordan for us to enjoy. Anyway, that's just a personal aside. Yes, Lisa.
I wanna comment on what was said a while ago about how it's not just the fault of the whites. You know what I mean? Our goal is to gain respect from them, for us to be treated as equals. But if we can't actually do that to ourselves, we can't even respect our own people, we can't give respect to our indigenous peoples, then how can you get respect from these colonizers, as we call them? Because we are doing it to our own country. I think for us to be empowered and to be on equal footing with whom we call as the white powers, the colonizers, is for us to feel that we are empowered. If we know that in our country, we uphold respect, we uphold equality, we uphold equity, and we give it to everyone. Just the LGBT community right now, the anti-discrimination law is not yet passed. How can we ask for that same respect from other countries? I think it's important for us to look into ourselves first, how we are dealing with these challenges that we are experiencing right now in our country. And it's sad because sometimes it's in the guise of, this is my own right. And because they feel that, they are not affected, they don't feel how, and they don't realize how other communities that are affected by this perspective, they don't feel that it doesn't affect them, so they don't push for it. It's very, very important now that I'm in government. I see the role of government as a very important mover and as a leader to effect change. It is up to us, the LGBT community, the marginalized communities in our country will always find opportunities and spaces to speak up and assert their voices. But if the leaders in this country do not act upon it, if we do not listen and take action, then why are we asking for this respect from other countries? We can't even give it to our own community. So I think it's very important for us to really make sure that we are the change that we want to be.
Oh, thank you for Charlize for another impassioned, as always, no? I mean, you always, and she's an actress, but when she talks like that, she's not acting, you know, it's all from the heart. And yes, I think
Miss Cecil.
Cecile would like to say something.
Well, I was really very inspired to hear the passion of Lisa because I'm so glad that FDCP agreed to this partnership, especially when you mentioned our indigenous, because I was affected because of my lack of knowledge about indigenous peoples as an artist. It was my husband, my late husband, who brought it to my mind the wealth of culture of our indigenous communities. He said he was a tribal person, you know, and he really knew all of the indigenous groups in the north, which, you know, for somebody raised in Manila and in our educational system, they were absent from our consciousness. So if FDCP, together with DepEd and let's say our initiatives, there are 110 tribes or indigenous communities. Our students, if you ask them, will know more the states of the United States than even about 10 or 15 indigenous groups. If our educational system, together with FDCP and our cultural community, work together so that either through comics to short films, the wealth of culture of each indigenous community is entered almost like an encyclopedia through, because teachers can't even teach it because they don't know. They lack the information. And I'm glad Lisa said that, you know, it's important that government can make things happen. It's really, oh my God, you really have to choose the people who will lead your government so that they can do this. The same thing now with the department, the new department for overseas Filipinos. As you can see, like with Ray, we have so many talents that have gone abroad. If we are able also to harness them, you know, through their own little things, this is what FDCP could really do, impact on education. We in the culture community can triangulate, and then all of the young, emerging, or even expert or senior artists do this. In a year's time, if simultaneously we do it, you will have a full knowledge, hindi kulang-kulang at saka misconstrued or misinterpreted. So that's the work, that's why I wanted this thing. And when I was in exile, I worked with the UN in terms of our cultural work with indigenous communities, ethnic communities in developed countries. And what fascinated me is when we invited the Basarwa people, the desert people of the Kalahari Desert, they looked exactly like, you'll be amazed, like our Aitas. No different, from the curly hair to the height, to the body build, to the instrument. Now, why do you have this thing happening, isn't it? We haven't really bridged that kind of connection, and it's in the arts that we can work this out. I think what's wonderful for this SDGs is that we're building partnerships. And before we end, I'd really like to thank our production group that worked out this program. Of course, our international secretariat. I just like to have it noted because we have Nilo, Agustin, Susan Claudio for all of our exhibits, and we also have Jordi and Marie and Sunny Valencia. It's a small core, but the passion has made it happen amidst this crazy COVID. And all of our partners in the international community, and of course UNESCO, and our own national government. Because we couldn't have done this if the Senate didn't believe in it and gave it funding. And the city of Manila is hosting it. And it has the endorsement of the Office of the President. So if everybody really works, something can happen. And I really agree that, you know, government can be a strong driver, but it needs people like Lisa.
I agree.
Okay. And thank you for our panels, and of course, our partner, Victor, has been working on this. 2 years we've been postponed. We've had difficulty with the visas, with everything. It's hysterical. But God is good. If something must be done, it happens.
Indeed.
Yeah. And thank you for making it happen. I thank our Consul General, who last minute said, hey, this is good, so he threw me into his consular meeting. And then, luckily, we've talked about this 2 years ago
2 years
with
ago.
David, and in fact,
Bohol,
we were going
yeah.
to have a training sana in Bohol, but COVID again interfered. But at last, it's done, and I think we'll have a very active path of collaboration. So thank you very much, and thank you to our, but this is all documented. It will be all brought together into a report, both to UNESCO and the UN Social and Economic Division that has been focused on the SDGs. So thank you. And maybe you don't know, the UN just opened up a whole exhibit on slavery that was opened by the President of the General Assembly just about, I think, 10 days ago. It's a big memorial that they put up at the UN campus. So I think this is a great thing in conjunction with this observance and, well, no fake news about slavery. Okay.
Ma'am, I just want to add, no, since documented to, and we want action, we want concrete action to happen. One of the most important things are initiatives that Sir Tedico started to put regional cinema in the forefront was to create a film festival that would really champion the importance of regional cinema. I think we could do the same for indigenous peoples by having a film festival dedicated to empowering the stories of the indigenous peoples. And the
That's
FPCP,
wonderful.
we are committing to creating this festival so that we can start and begin to discover, you know, their voices, their struggles, their triumphs, their victories, and their,
It's a
and their
wealth
challenges.
of experience, really.
Yes.
That's,
So
and we should connect with all indigenous peoples because we did have a festival, but it wasn't continued. So if we can do this, I'm sure. And there is an indigenous peoples section in UNESCO. So I'm sure they will welcome a festival that encourages the stories by indigenous peoples about them, and it will enrich our, well, our spiritual strength to confront all of our, well, difficult, quadruple crisis that we are facing, from COVID to climate to conflict and the collapsing economy. Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, I just wanted to respond to you that I'm just thinking aloud, that one possible thing that we could do together, I did say that we are considering a series, we're discussing with Hollywood about 8 more, and out of deference to Cecile, I said that I would like to start with Philippines. The next one for 23 is Kiribati. So we are going to have some discussion with the director of the film and also some producers. So perhaps we could involve you also in the debate to make it a success. We are planning it for January next year.
You can be rest assured of our support and our full commitment, boss. Maraming salamat
thank you,
po.
Lisa. It's so nice to feel connected. Yung parang soulmate. Okay, thank you.
And thank you, everyone.
And thank you.
Have a good evening.
We'd like to thank the team of CJ Andaluz also. Thank you for your patience, and I know you'll be editing this. We want to thank IBC, which covered this, the showing, and then we'll give it also, and then maybe somebody reporting. It was almost so difficult because everybody is so concerned about the campaign. We couldn't get interest about this. Walang space. Pero I think we slowly will do it. So thank you, Teddy.
Ms. Cecil,
Thank
I'd
you.
like to thank the filmmakers and the people from the film sector who joined us tonight. Roma Regala, our production designer, is
thank
here.
you.
Anjarmar Rebeta, our filmmakers here. Of course, Direct Ai Segura joined us also.
Yeah,
so thank you
Ais,
very
thank
much
you.
for being part of this discussion.
Thank you.
So,
We hope
Ms.
we
Cecil
really
Guidote
can-
Alvarez, thank you.
No, thank you because we consider this a night of partnership, of forging a partnership. I hope not just for a short time, but for some strong permanent action.
It will happen.
Instant permanent action. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Bye.
Let's take a photo opportunity. Let's move forward a bit.
You know how many days?
And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our Afro-Asian SDGs night.